This is a video on behalf of Anthony Nolan. Now, some of you will know who Anthony Nolan is, and some of you won't. Anthony Nolan was a little boy who was born in 1971. And he had, and I have crib sheets here because there's a lot of stuff and it's important and I don't want to get it wrong. And he had something called Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome. And for that, you needed, and still do need, a bone marrow transplant. Now, at that time, it was impossible to connect, or virtually impossible to connect with somebody who wasn't a relative. And let me make sure I get this right because it's shocking. Between 65 and 75% of people who do need either a bone marrow or a stem cell transplant, and remember at that time stem cells weren't a thing, can't get one from a close relative. And at that time there was no other way of finding it. So in 1974, Anthony's mother set up the Anthony Nolan Bone Marrow Register, and that was a way of trying to connect people with bone marrow with likely recipients. Brilliant idea. Now, really sadly, nobody could be found for Anthony, and he died in 1979, which is, yeah, like I said, very sad. But since then, the Anthony Nolan Bone Marrow Register has continued. It's adapted and it's modernised, and between then and now, it has helped over 22,000 people. That's a lot of people. And I'm not asking you for money. Before you think, I'm not asking you for money. If you want to give money, you can give. If you get something severe aplastic anemia, one, leukemia, we all know that, it's blood cancer, lymphoma, and again, it's another type of cancer, this time it affects white blood cells, multiple myeloma, and that's a cancer affecting blood plasma cells, and then there are certain blood, immune and metabolic disorders, and including sickle cell anemia, thalassemia, severe combined immunodeficiency, and Hurler syndrome. And there are other Wiskott-Aldrich. There are a lot of things. If you have those, you may well need either a bone marrow or a stem cell transplant. And to find a recipient, you will really, realistically, if you can't find a relative, and remember those numbers I told you, they're very high, you will need somebody off of the register. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about blood. Now, when Anthony Nolan was small, you had to give a blood sample to be typed. Now you don't. You just do it with saliva, and most of the time you will need to give stem cells. Now, stem cells are amazing things. Have I got it here? Well, I haven't, but nonetheless. Most of the time, you'll be asked to give stem cells, and that is done like a blood transfusion. Doesn't hurt. You go in, you give the blood, you give the stem cells, you have a hot drink. You may be like a blood transfusion. If you give blood, maybe you feel a bit woozy. You need to make sure you have a nice drink and you eat well and you rest for 24 hours to allow your body time to catch up. If you're ever asked to give bone marrow, which is less likely now, you go into hospital and you have a general anaesthetic. So you don't feel it at all at the time. It doesn't hurt. You go to sleep. You give the bone marrow, and you recover from that because your bone marrow is a factory. It's where your blood is made. And stem cells have this unique ability that they can turn themselves into the cells that your body needs. So your bone marrow is full of stem cells. Like I said, I'm not asking for money. What I'm asking for is for you to register. They need the numbers. And it's really important for young black men and young Asian men to register. Remember what I said about sickle cell anemia? You're needed. You're needed. It will take nothing if your employer won't cover the time off for you to give it. The trust will help you cover your expenses. If you're asked to donate, you will save a life. It takes a swab, you send it off, you register. You don't, in fact, this is the other thing, is if you register, your chances of being called are actually not that high. It's not like you're going to register and you're going to be running around from Tuesday. You probably won't be called. Obviously, I am no longer registered because I have cancer and I can't. I'm also, quite frankly, too old at this point. but I've never been called. Been registered for a long time, and I've never been called. But obviously you could be. So what the Anthony Nolan Trust really needs is for you to register, to give your sample and go on the register, because the more people they've got, the more lives they can help save. I told you I didn't want money. And honestly, you won't regret it. Like I said, the chances are you won't be called. But if you are called, you will know that you personally saved a life. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I don't think you'll regret it.